So I'm finally back for patch version 0.4, which brings Shinbi and many new features into the game, as well as some balancing. Before I get into the notes, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my Discord in the description and the pinned comment. But to start off, Shinbi is being added next Tuesday. First up is her passive Biting Melody. Her basic attacks deal 10 magical damage, plus bonus damage based on her magical power on hit. Periodically, this will deal 4 times damage. Damaging an enemy hero decreases the cooldown by 1 second. Her primary is Line Tempo, summoning a spirit wolf that lunges in a straight line and can pass through enemies dealing magical damage. Shinbi's secondary is Circle Rhythm, summoning 4 spirit wolves that circle her for 3 seconds. They both deal damage based on magical power, and give Shinbi a shield based on her magical power too, until the ability expires. Her alternate ability is Rushing Beat. She dashes forward, dealing magical damage to all enemies passed through. This can be recast within 3 seconds to trigger a second dash. And finally, her ultimate is All Kill. Dealing damage to enemies with abilities will apply a stack of track for 8 seconds, stacking up to 8 times. If she then triggers this ability, with all those stacks applied, it summons wolves to attack the target with the most stacks, dealing magical damage per spirit wolf. I think Shinbi's kit, based on just the descriptions and what we know so far, she will be pretty fun to play. I think she will be a very mobile jungler, or potentially offlaner in the right matchup. She has multiple dashes, a self shield, and also high burst potential after level 6. By looking at her, I think you could probably get some funny builds with stuff like Elefrost and Magnify, but I will save those for another day. Either way, she looks pretty slick and fluid in how she plays, so I will, as usual, try and probably fail to play her on Tuesday, because I get last pick almost every time. Moving on to the feature additions now. I fucking called it, literally the day of the patch notes, but the store is coming soon. The Murdoch one and the Gideon one are my personal favourites out of the image. If you had to pick one, which one would you want? Tell me in a comment. They also mentioned alongside this that they are going to do a full UI overhaul at some point this year. Fangtooth has been reworked. After you get 3 Fangtooths, you cannot gain any more passive buffs. After the 3rd Fangtooth, a Primal Fangtooth will spawn. If you kill this one, you get a temporary buff called Primordial Blaze, which lasts 2 minutes and 30 seconds. If you damage an enemy, it sets them ablaze, dealing 2 true damage each minute the game has been going. So if it's been 30 minutes, you will deal 60 true damage over 4 seconds. I assume this can be refreshed with each instance of damage. It is also increased by 50% against enemies lower than 25% HP. It is capped, however, at 80 true damage or 120 for enemies under 25% health. Player versus AI mode is coming in this patch, so for anyone who's new or just wants to play around a bit against bots, they can now have a safer environment to do so, rather than jumping into a live game. Gadget's base skin is getting changed. It's a bit cryptic and no image to go with it, but I guess we will have to find out on Tuesday what this means. It must be a considerable change though if the current base skin is potentially going to be a skin in the future. There are a few other improvements that I will just leave up for you to read, but the main one in my opinion is the 50% reduction in ranged attack delay. I really want to test that to see how snappy it feels now, as that is a huge reduction. Looking at hero balancing now, Crunch is getting slightly rebalanced on a few abilities. His primary is having power taken away from its base damage and moved onto its physical scaling, and his secondary is being slightly buffed at its base damage. I don't really play Crunch, so it's hard to say if this was needed. I think this was more of a buff than anything, as he already scaled quite hard in the jungle, as he can farm pretty damn quick. Gideon's health growth is getting a teeny tiny nerf. Muriel is getting quite a bit of an overhaul. Her primary, Serenity, is getting buffed from both the slow amount and length. Her alternate ability, Alacrity, is now scaling from magical power, getting a cooldown decrease, and getting a second charge of the ability. So now this will work similarly to Kalari's daggers, where you get 2 charges of that ability. Her secondary ability has been buffed in the shield amount quite a bit at all levels, but at its cooldown increased, and her ultimate is now quicker to use, has a lower cooldown, but stuns for less time. Overall, I get the feeling that Muriel will be a very, very strong pick now, and that she will be an absolute menace to society. Will people finally be buying Breach? This might be the patch that it's a requirement to do so in the duo lane. She is looking super strong from these changes. On the flip side to this, Nabash has been slapped down a bit as he was pretty strong this patch. Base mana reduced, nearby ally mana regen decreased on his passive, his secondary, Song of My People, has been nerfed in healing at all levels and also decreased the magical power scaling on it. Expected this to be fair as he was super fun to play, but not so much fun to play against. Rampage is also getting a nerf bat introduction, physical power growth reduced, his alternate ability Pounce has had its bonus health scaling reduced, and his secondary ability Rumble is buffed on its base damage at all levels but nerfed in scaling. And Rampage's ultimate Behemoth is nerfed on bonus health, but buffed on the regen multiplier and the cooldown has been reduced. The amount of Rampages I have seen, I am not surprised. He was strong pretty much all game as long as he was in the jungle. I think this will bring him more into coming online at level 6 and changing his item priorities. Revenant has been buffed a little in his passive and nerfed a little in his primary ability's magical scaling. This should help settle him a bit more as Hybrid Revenant has been a thing for the last few weeks, and while not amazing most of the time, it was a meme to watch half of your HP vanish in 1Q. The buff to his passive should help a little to push him through the game with a bit more bonus physical power. Richter is getting a nerf to both his mana regen and the mana cost of his alternate ability Riplash. I think this might be the nail in the coffin for spamming Riplash as Richter, which is good because before you could use it quite a lot even early on in the game. It was pretty oppressive to play against as a carry, and hopefully now if you dodge a hook it's a bit more punishing as they will now run out of mana quicker. I guess we will find out. Sevarog flew too close to the sun. His health regen is being nerfed as well as his primary ability Siphon is having its physical power scaling reduced, and healing on minions is reduced by 5%. This was pretty expected as he was constantly picked now from the last patch and could survive very well with the healing from the primary and the health growth buff from the last patch. I don't think this will affect him too much, at least I hope not. He finally got a taste of being a viable pick. Looking at the items, Divine Wreath got a bug fix to make the passive no longer a unique one. Nightfall is being changed, Omnivamp from its base stats is being removed, Physical Pen is buffed, Isolation range is decreased, and the build path changed. However, its passive has been buffed by 3% in Omnivamp. I'm unsure about the changes as the Omnivamp was really nice for early game sustain in offlane and quick trades. It can still be used with the passive to heal a little, but it makes it a requirement to buy another Omnivamp item if you want true sustain, which on characters like Feng Mao, I potentially wouldn't buy more than one Omnivamp item. Mutilator is being nerfed. Again. Omnivamp decreased by 3%, but ability haste up by 5%. Tectonic Mallet is having its Omnivamp removed also, but gaining 10 ability haste, magical armor up by 10, and the build path has been changed. Wellspring has been bug fixed to, well, work. It also has had a quality of life change to only go on cooldown and cast Soothing Waters if there is a friendly nearby who needs healing. So that's pretty neat. There are a ton of bug fixes again which I will just let scroll as usual. I'm looking forward to the patch. New hero, the shop, player versus AI, and the Primal Fangtooth change. Muriel will be a terror I think, and offlaners and junglers will be clipped a little in sustain as a few of the items either now don't give any Omnivamp or reduced Omnivamp, but I don't think it will be too hard of a nerf to those who took those items regularly. One thing I will say I'm surprised at is no Sky Splitter nerfs, but I think the reason for that is maybe that will come with the carry items rework, and that's why we haven't seen it yet over the last few patches. Let me know what you think of Shinbi or any aspects of this patch in a comment, and I will see you for the next video.